Have you ever felt like someone could steal your peace with nothing more than a glance or a comment? It happens in the smallest, most ordinary moments. You're sitting at work, focused, doing your best, when a colleague rolls their eyes, and suddenly you feel your chest tighten. Or at home, after a long day, someone you love says something sharp, and it cuts deeper than it should. It's almost like the ground beneath your feet shifts, and the calm you carried a moment ago evaporates instantly. Imagine holding a glass of crystal clear water in your hands. It looks pure, untouched, refreshing. But then a single drop of dark ink falls into it. Just one drop, and everything changes. The water is no longer clear. That's how quickly someone else's energy, words, or presence can seep into your inner world and stain what once felt pure. And in that instant, you can't help but wonder, why is it so easy for others to have this kind of power over me? Most of us grow up believing that peace is fragile, something dependent on outside conditions. We tell ourselves, if only they stopped criticizing me, I could be calm. If only they listened more, I would feel safe. If only they changed, I would finally breathe. But here's the hard truth. People don't always change. They will still speak carelessly. They will still dismiss what matters to you. They will still act in ways you cannot control. And if your peace depends on them, you'll spend your entire life walking on eggshells, always one wrong word away from breaking. That is no way to live. Jung showed us another way, a deeper power that has nothing to do with changing others and everything to do with changing your relationship with yourself. Think about it. What if the real problem isn't the drop of ink, but the way you let it spread until it colors the entire glass? What if the real battlefield isn't their words or their tone, but inside your own reaction, your old wounds, the unhealed places that flare up every time they're touched? Jung's psychology, combined with spiritual insight, tells us that the storm outside doesn't have to become a storm inside. The people who trigger you are not holding a weapon against you. They're touching a nerve that already existed, a part of you that longs for healing. That's why their words feel so powerful. They awaken what is unresolved. So imagine this. You're standing in front of the very person who once rattled you, the one who made you feel small, invisible, or angry. They speak, but instead of breaking down, you breathe deeply. Instead of reacting, you hold steady. Instead of letting their storm drag you away, you feel your own feet rooted firmly in the ground. You are no longer a glass of water, waiting to be contaminated. You are the ocean, vast, deep, unshaken by a single drop of ink. This is a gift of calm, the kind that doesn't come from silence outside, but from strength inside. And here's the shift. What if every person who unsettles you is not your enemy, but your teacher? What if the ones who shake you are actually mirrors, pointing directly at what you're ready to face within yourself? Maybe the impatient boss is showing you your own fear of not being enough. Maybe the cold partner is reflecting the ways you struggle to give yourself warmth. Maybe the manipulative friend is awakening your hidden difficulty in saying no. Suddenly, these encounters are no longer random. They become invitations to step deeper into self-knowledge. Now, let me ask you again, have you mistaken the triggers of life for chains that cannot be broken? What if the ink that clouds your water is not a curse but a signal, telling you exactly where your healing must begin? Jung believed that everything disturbing in others could guide us back to the parts of ourselves we've ignored. And once you realize that, no one holds the keys to your peace but you. But of course, the question remains, what is this invisible force that makes us so reactive, so easily destabilized, and how do we finally loosen its grip? Jung spent his life studying the shadow within us, the unseen patterns, the buried wounds, the parts we deny yet carry everywhere. And it is there in the unseen that the journey to unshakable calm begins. Carl Jung had a word for the invisible mechanism that makes us lose our calm so easily: projection. He explained that much of what irritates, angers, or unsettles us in others is not truly about them at all. It's about the part of ourselves we haven't yet accepted. When something inside us feels too heavy or uncomfortable to face, the mind finds a way to push it outward. We see it in the people around us, we label it as their flaw, and then we fight against it as if it lived only in them. But in reality, it is our own reflection staring back. This is why Jung insisted that the people who disturb us the most are often our greatest teachers. because they carry the mirror that reveals our hidden wounds. Take, for example, a woman I once met who couldn't stand her boss. He was controlling, always hovering, constantly pointing out what she did wrong. Every meeting left her tense. Every comment felt like an attack, and she carried that resentment home night after night. For years, she told herself the problem was him. His ego, his need to dominate, his lack of trust. But when she began therapy, something surprising emerged. She realized that her anger wasn't simply about his control. It came from her own fear of stepping into power. Deep down, she had always avoided leadership, terrified of making mistakes, worried about being judged if she took responsibility. Her boss's controlling nature pressed directly on that hidden fear. What she hated in him was what she hadn't yet embraced in herself: the ability to hold authority with confidence. The moment she saw that, the dynamic began to change. And maybe you felt something similar. Have you ever noticed that what you criticize most in others often points to something unresolved inside you? The friend you call selfish might be echoing your struggle to set boundaries. The person you judge as arrogant may be reflecting your buried desire to express yourself more freely. The sibling who frustrates you with laziness could be mirroring the part of you that longs to rest but feels guilty about slowing down. Jung's insight was simple yet radical. The other person is not just themselves. They are a mirror, and through them, your shadow speaks. Imagine standing in front of a cracked mirror. Each fracture bends a reflection, showing parts of your face you'd rather not see. Some pieces look distorted, others almost unrecognizable. That's what projection does. It splits the image of who you are, scattering the pieces across the people around you. You stop seeing them for who they are, and instead see fragments of yourself you've tried to bury. The mirror becomes unavoidable, and the more you resist it, the more it disturbs you. But here's the danger. What happens when the mirror stops being just a reflection and starts to control your entire life? When every encounter is colored by projections, when every relationship feels like a battlefield of your own unhealed wounds, you lose the ability to see reality clearly. And that is where Jung takes us deeper, into the heart of how the shadow, if left unchecked, begins to dominate everything. Think about how this hidden mechanism shows up in the everyday moments of your life. At work, it might look like a simple comment from your boss or a colleague, a small criticism about a detail you missed. On the surface, it's nothing dramatic, yet it drains you for the rest of the day. You replay the words in your head, twisting them into proof that you're not enough, letting them echo louder than they ever should. Or in relationships, you might notice how emotional manipulation slips in so quietly. A partner's sigh, a friend's silence, a guilt-laden phrase like, "If you really cared, you would..." And suddenly, your peace is gone, not because of what they did, but because of the unresolved parts of you that leap forward to meet their words. And then there's family, where the bonds are deep and the roots even deeper. Constant demands, unspoken expectations, the weight of "you should," or "why can't you?" All of it becomes a script that plays inside you long after the conversation is over. This is what Jung was pointing to when he said, what we deny in ourselves, we find as fate outside of us. Every shadow we refuse to acknowledge inside will eventually show up in the world around us, embodied in people and circumstances that trigger us again and again. We think the battle is out there, but the truth is more unsettling. The real struggle is within, between the part of us that longs for calm and the part that fears what calm might reveal. Notice how this loop works. You don't lose your peace because someone criticized you, manipulated you, or demanded too much. You lose it because your unconscious left the door wide open, allowing the shadow to step in. The calm that once seemed steady becomes fragile, like a surface of water that looks serene until the smallest breeze hits it. And then, just like that, it transforms into a storm. But the storm wasn't created by the wind. It was already present in the instability underneath. That's how it works inside us. The calm we thought we had shatters because it was never rooted deep enough to withstand the shadow's voice. And the more we ignore this, the stronger the pattern becomes. We blame others, we fight circumstances. We tell ourselves a story that if only they changed, we'd be fine. Yet the truth is, we are chained not by their actions, but by our reactions, by the unseen forces inside us that keep responding the same way, over and over. So the question is not whether life will test you with criticism, manipulation, or demands. It always will. The real question is, how long will you keep living as a prisoner of those reactions? Because the true danger of this cycle is far greater than just losing a little calm. When you live in constant reaction, the cost is heavier than you realize at first. At the beginning, it just feels like tension, like an ordinary bad day. But over time, the cycle deepens, pulling you into exhaustion. Every criticism chips away at your confidence. Every demand drains a little more of your energy. Every manipulative glance leaves you second-guessing yourself. Before long, you're not just tired, you're living in a state of emotional burnout. It's as if every time you begin to steady yourself, another wave crashes over you, and instead of finding ground, you're swept away again. When your calm is stolen enough times, anxiety takes root. Nights stretch long. Sleep feels impossible. Your mind replays conversations on an endless loop. Your body, too, begins to carry the weight. Headaches that come out of nowhere, muscles always tight. The quiet ache of psychosomatic illnesses that doctors can't fully explain. Jung often spoke of how the psyche, when ignored, will speak through the body. The shadow doesn't vanish when denied. It finds a way to make itself heard, even if it has to whisper through illness. And slowly, the fragmentation spreads into your identity. You no longer know who you are outside of these reactions. Your sense of self becomes a fragile castle of sand, standing only until the next wave of someone else's mood or judgment. Each tide erases what you built, forcing you to start over again and again. You live as if borrowed from the emotions of others, unable to trust your own ground. Picture yourself as a marionette dangling on strings you can't see. Someone raises an eyebrow, you jerk one way. Someone sighs, you jerk another. A demand here, a cold silence there, and you are pulled in directions you never chose. The strings are invisible, yet they dictate your every move. Your own will grow weaker, your choices fade, until you feel you no longer belong to yourself. That is a dangerous consequence of never facing what lies beneath. You become a puppet, dancing to the tune of the world, never hearing your own music. And this cycle doesn't just last weeks or months. For many, it lasts years. Entire seasons of life wasted in reaction, in survival, in chasing scraps of calm that vanish the moment someone else enters the room. Little by little, it consumes your energy, your passion, your joy, until one day, you wake up and realize the life you are living is no longer yours. It is a patchwork of other people's shadows stitched onto your skin. But here's the turning point. Jung discovered that these strings, as real as they feel, are not unbreakable. There is a path, a way to cut through the invisible wires and reclaim the ground beneath your own feet. The question is, are you willing to see the shadow for what it is and step into the work of setting yourself free? Jung believed that transformation begins the moment you stop expecting others to protect your calm and instead take responsibility for the world within you. The first step is recognition. You admit, sometimes painfully, that peace does not depend on the words, moods, or actions of those around you. It depends on your willingness to meet your shadow, the parts of you you've denied, the emotions you push aside, the fears you've hidden. Recognition is like turning on a light in a dark room. The shapes that once terrified you are no longer monsters, but furniture you can finally see and rearrange. The second step is integration. This is where you embrace emotions instead of exiling them. Anger, fear, resentment. They are not enemies to silence, but messengers to listen to. Integration doesn't mean letting these emotions control you. It means allowing them space to exist without shame. You sit with your anger and realize it's asking for boundaries. You feel your fear and recognize it's pointing to growth. You acknowledge resentment and see it signaling the need for change. By holding these emotions close, you begin to weave them back into yourself, no longer letting them live as strangers in the dark. The third step is conscious action. This is where the real practice unfolds in daily life. Instead of reacting on impulse, you pause, you breathe, you count to 3, and then you choose your response, not from old wounds but from clarity. Sometimes that response is silence, the kind of silence that carries strength, not avoidance. Other times, It's words spoken with calm authority, like, I don't accept this tone with me. Conscious action means you stop being a puppet to invisible strings and start moving by your own will. It's not about controlling others. It's about not being controlled by your own unconscious. The fourth step is legacy. This is where transformation becomes a daily choice, not just a one-time breakthrough. Preserving your peace becomes an act of love toward yourself, a commitment renewed in small ways each day. Writing in a journal before confronting someone, so your words come from clarity rather than rage. Practicing deep breathing as a ritual, teaching your body that it no longer has to live in fight or flight mode. Drawing short, firm lines in conversations. Today I choose calm. Each small action is a thread, and together they weave a new identity, one that doesn't fracture at every storm but stands rooted in self-respect. Imagine a heavy door that's been locked for years. Behind it lies your freedom, your unshakable calm. For so long, you've pushed, begged, tried to force it open, but the door never moved. And then you discover something surprising. The key was in your hand all along. Simple, unadorned, but powerful enough to unlock what felt impossible. That key is your ability to choose, again and again, to integrate instead of deny, to act consciously instead of react blindly, to guard your peace as though it were sacred, because it is. But before you step fully into this work, there's something important you need to know. The path of integration is not free of danger. There are traps that look like progress, but only deepen the shadow's grip. And if you don't recognize them, they can pull you right back into the same old cycles, while convincing you that you're growing. Every path of transformation carries its own hidden traps. Just because you've begun to find calm doesn't mean the shadow gives up easily. In fact, it often finds new disguises, tempting you to step off the path without even realizing it. One of the most common traps is ego inflation. You start to believe that your ability to remain calm makes you superior to those still caught in reaction. You see yourself as enlightened while others are less evolved. But in reality, that is just another mask of the ego. True calm has no arrogance in it. It is quiet strength, not superiority. The moment you use it to look down on others, you've already fallen back into the shadow's grip. Another danger is isolation. Silence, when used with intention, is power, but silence as escape becomes a prison. Some people retreat so far into themselves that they mistake withdrawal for growth. They avoid conflict, avoid relationships, avoid responsibility, all in the name of keeping peace. Yet this isn't peace. It's avoidance wearing a spiritual costume. Jung would remind us that individuation requires engagement with life, not escape from it. The goal is not to build walls, but to hold calm even while standing in the noise of the world. There is also the savior complex. Many believe that staying calm means carrying the weight for everyone else. They become the strong one, the one who never breaks, the one who absorbs every storm. But slowly, this becomes another form of bondage. To confuse calm with martyrdom is to misunderstand its essence. Calm is not about rescuing others at the cost of your own soul. It's about showing them, by your example, that freedom is possible. The moment calm becomes performant for others, it ceases to be authentic. And then, of course, there is regression. Under pressure, when life tests you hardest, old patterns return. The words you swore you'd never speak slip out of your mouth. The fears you thought you'd conquered rush back in waves. This doesn't mean you failed. It simply means growth is never linear. Every step forward comes with a temptation to step back. Jung believed that transformation is a spiral. You will revisit old wounds, but each time from a higher level of awareness. What matters is not never falling, but choosing to rise again differently. These pitfalls are why transformation requires vigilance. Nietzsche once spoke of the will to power, of pushing forward with strength at all costs. Meister Eckhart, centuries earlier, spoke of emptying oneself, surrendering all that was not essential. Jung, standing between these voices, sought balance, the strength to step into your own power and the humility to let go of illusions. The path of calm walks this razor's edge, between power and emptiness, between self-assertion and surrender. Picture a long road stretching ahead. At first glance, it looks simple. But as you walk, forks begin to appear. One leads toward integration, the other toward illusion. One deepens your growth, the other quietly diverts you. The road doesn't announce which is which. You must learn to recognize the signs, to listen inwardly, to choose with awareness. Because every step shapes who you are becoming. And when you learn to walk this road, avoiding the false turns, something extraordinary begins to unfold. And now we arrive at the moment everything has been leading to, the quiet realization that calm is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of a center that cannot be moved. Life will always bring storms. People will still criticize, manipulate, or demand. The world will not suddenly grow silent just because you've begun to heal. But something profound changes inside you. You no longer confuse calm with control. You no longer chase a fragile peace that disappears the moment someone frowns at you. Instead, you discover a calm that lives deeper than circumstance, a calm that belongs wholly to you. Picture a great tree standing in the middle of a storm. The wind howls, the rain lashes against its bark. Its branches whip violently in the air. To the eye, it looks as though the storm will tear it apart. But beneath the surface, its roots run deep. The trunk bends but does not break. And when the storm finally passes, the tree remains, scarred perhaps, but standing strong, more alive than before. That is the image of true calm. You may sway, you may shake, but you remain rooted in who you are. Jung believed that when we integrate our shadow, when we stop denying the emotions and wounds we carry, something remarkable is born. Out of the silence of reaction, the authentic self emerges, no longer fractured, no longer chained to moods of others, no longer living as a puppet of invisible strings. You stand as your whole self, free from manipulation, because nothing outside you has the power to define your worth. This is the rebirth he spoke of, the individuation that makes a human life feel real and alive. And here is where it all comes together. Calm is not passive, nor is it weakness. It is not closing your eyes to avoid reality. Calm is active freedom. It is the power to see clearly, to respond wisely, to live without being enslaved by the storms around you. It is the quiet courage to say, I belong to myself. So remember this. Storms will always come, but roots can always grow deeper. The mirror may crack, but the true reflection remains. The shadow may whisper, but your light is stronger. Calm is not about escaping life, but about meeting it fully with presence, strength, and peace. True calm is the freedom no one can steal. Write it now in the comments. I choose my peace. And if this video spoke to you, share it with someone who needs to learn how to stand firm in their own storm. Stay with me for the next video, where we'll uncover another powerful secret from Jung's psychology, one that will help you transform not only how you face the world, but how you finally meet yourself.